Luffy's true dream is not to become king of the pirates. Becoming the pirate king through finding the One Piece is the tool to make his dream become a reality. And I have become obsessed with thinking about Luffy's dream. And ultimately, the truth behind Luffy's dream seems like intrinsically connected to the truth about the One Piece, the Void Century, the true history of the world, and what freedom really is in the world of One Piece. And if you're only listening to this, I'm sitting in front of my house. I bought this $600 house from Costco and built it with a friend in a mere few hours on a 100-degree day out here in the United States. For most people my age and younger, we're all wondering, how are we ever going to afford a house? Well, you can get these little, they're called playhouses or something. They're at Costco. You can get them. And they come with windows and everything, right? They come with windows. They don't have any glass with them. This one comes, it's a 2-story model. It's got a kitchen. The pieces are detachable for whatever reason that would be useful. There's a second floor that, double serves as a bedroom, balcony, and a quick exit from the house. You can just go right down the slide. But now I'm going to take off my silly hat and we're going to get back to talking about Luffy's dream and everything that's kind of happened around Luffy's dream, because relatively recently in the story, Oda took the opportunity to have Luffy tell the Straw Hat Pirates, his crew, his dream. What lies at the end of this journey, what lies at the end of Luffy's life or something. And this dream isn't, I don't want to just be the Pirate King. I have to become the Pirate King to make this dream become possible. And so then the question is, how do you become the Pirate King? And as we've set up in the story, it's by finding the One Piece, by finding the truth about everything. The most important factor about Luffy's dream is that it's a dream that was shared by Roger. Something that was word for word shared by Roger. That's something that Shanks tells Rayleigh, which we see in a quick kind of on Rayleigh reflecting on, he meets Luffy and then he thinks back to what Shanks told him and he goes, this is the same guy. Because Shanks tells him, I met a boy in the East Blue and he had the exact same dream as our captain, Goldie Roger. And that's really interesting because Roger didn't eat a devil fruit. Roger especially didn't eat the gum fruit. So somehow Luffy inherited Roger's will and thus inherited his dream. But that kind of doesn't feel 100% correct, because whose will did Roger inherit when he went on his journey? And I think we can obviously say that that's Joy Boy. So I don't think it's too much of a leap to say that Joy Boy probably had the exact same dream as Roger and the exact same dream as Luffy. And Joy Boy failed to make the dream become a reality, as did Roger. But Roger was just too early, so that's a little bit different. But ultimately, he couldn't realize the dream, and so the dream or will was inherited by another, and that's Luffy. And we know that Joy Boy didn't really kind of reach his dream because we see his apology letter to Poseidon, and that's written on a poneglyph down in Fishman Island. And so what we get is this multi-generational story of this single dream eventually becoming true, and it's taken several lifetimes at least. And we don't know if there was somebody before Roger that inherited the same dream as well. That's always possible. Notably, Mont Blanc Noland was kind of the big explorer, big pirate type of figure that would have been kind of between Roger and Joy Boy. Now, at the end of Wano, on their way to Egghead Island, Luffy decides to finally share his dream with the crew. And it's less that he decided to finally tell him, as he just forgot that he had never done it in the first place. Classic Luffy. So at this point, there are a few people who know what Luffy's dream is. Obviously, none of it's said to the audience. The first time ever, and this is kind of impressive, that this is literally a theme from Chapter 1, because when the red-haired pirates are getting ready to leave Luffy's village, Luffy declares that he's going to become the king of the pirates, right? At this point, Luffy doesn't have the straw hat, and Shanks and the whole crew are kind of shocked by these words. And then Luffy says, then I'm gonna blah. And then everybody looks really shocked, right? Now at the time, we don't really know what the fuck just happened, but this is the first time that Luffy shares his dream. This is the first time somebody else has heard it. But Shanks has already heard this dream because he was a member of Roger's crew. And in fact, Roger gave the straw hat to Shanks, who then at this exact moment, after hearing Roger's dream from this like 8-year-old boy, he's like, shit, dude, I'm giving you your fucking hat back, finally. And that's an interesting idea. Like, Roger's will is alive inside Luffy. Maybe when Roger gave the straw hat to Shanks, he said, you know, you're just holding this for me. Return it to me when you become a great pirate. And until this moment, Shanks was never a great pirate while his captain was alive. And here in this random ass island in the East Blue, Shanks is in a way talking to his captain again. He's hearing his captain's dream again. And so Shanks gives him the hat, or gives the hat back, however you want to look at it. And that starts Luffy's journey on, you know, finding the One Piece and starting a new era in the world, ultimately. And we don't hear about Luffy's dream for a while, but in terms of the actual timeline, the next time Luffy told somebody about his dream was when he became brothers with Ace and Sabo. The three boys, they kind of declare their dreams to each other, right? And then Luffy shares his dream, which off panel. But we see the reaction of Ace and Sabo, and they're both completely shocked. They're like, this is one of the most insane things I've ever heard in my life, but they know their younger brother, and they instantly believe in him. Their response is pretty dang close to the response of the red-haired pirates in Chapter 1. The next time we kind of hear about Luffy's dream, it's just a small detail, and I mentioned it earlier, but it's sometime between Shanks leaving Luffy's island and probably him going back to the Grand Line, and eventually he runs into Silver's Rayleigh, his former vice captain. And Rayleigh is shocked to hear that Shanks met a boy in the East Blue that word for word said he had the same exact dream as their captain Roger, that Roger's not actually dead, which kind of ties back to like Hiruluk and the kind of message in Drum Island about how as long as your name's not forgotten, as long as your dream's not forgotten, you can never truly die. And the moment that Shanks talks to Rayleigh is really cool because Shanks looks so fucking excited and Rayleigh looks a little bit stunned, and I just love their reactions. It's something that happens so quickly when you watch the anime or read the manga for the first time, you know, because you're on like a tear, right? You're just going through as many chapters, as many episodes as possible. You're not really focusing on making all these little connections, and it only lasts a few panels and boom, bye. And we don't really hear about Luffy's dream for a long time. So we know Luffy shares the same dream as Gold Roger. So the next time we hear about Luffy's dream is actually through Goldie Roger. And this is it during Kazuki Oden's flashback during, I think that's the third act, maybe it's the second act of Wano. And Oden is just joined the Whitebeard Pirates and he's been pirating around for a while. And then they run into Goldie Roger's crew. And Oden and Whitebeard sit down after a kerfuffle. And Oden and Whitebeard just hang out together. They're talking about this world. They're talking about things kind of grandeur and silly like dreams. And that's when Goldie Roger shares his dream with Oden and Whitebeard. And these two and Oden and Whitebeard, they're titans. They're some of the most powerful men in the world. You know, I'm sure they have Roger's respect. And they're just like, what the fuck, dude? Like, are you serious? Like, are you a fucking child? You know, because this dream is childish in nature. It's something that a child would even imagine. Their reaction is basically that that's fucking impossible. Like, that can't be. And ultimately, Oden's response to hearing Roger's dream is like, I want to go with this guy. I want to see if he can make this happen. I want to see if this dream is possible. And so he writes all of this stuff down in his logbook, which, you know, then falls into the possession eventually of Yamato and then to Momonosuke, who then kind of have a better understanding of like what's at stake and what's going to happen in the world and how important Luffy is, and it helps them understand how important Wano is. Now, the next time the dream is discussed, this is like a really cool one because I'm not much of a fan of the One Piece anime. It's pretty good, but you know, if you've seen enough stuff, you know that the One Piece anime has a pacing problem because it's an ongoing series rather than being seasonal. It just comes out weekly, basically forever, with no breaks, and that's just like a really big strain on production. And so the first half of One Piece is adapted like 1/4 of the speed that it probably could be if it was as like tight of an adaptation as something like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which adapts like 4 or 5 chapters of JoJo's per episode of anime. It's insane. You know, One Piece is nowhere near that. And when you get further into One Piece, there's certain arcs that are like half a chapter per episode, you know, and that's just getting to the point of ridiculousness sometimes. But, you know, you get a lot of cool things with the anime and stuff, so it's still pretty fucking good. I like the anime, but, you know, I'm a manga elitist. But there is an episode of the anime that's, you know, pretty new, and it's episode 1015, and it's an expansion of canonical material where Ace meets Yamato and talks to Yamato and talks about Luffy a little bit too, and how he's like the real badass pirate that's going to be coming up. And in this episode, Ace shares Luffy's dream with Yamato, and this is not the first time Yamato has heard this dream, because again, Yamato at this time has Oden's logbook and has thus seen a lot of the stuff that Oden has seen that he was willing to write in the logbook, and part of that was writing down what Gold D. Roger's dream was, and it's the same exact dream of Luffy. So when Ace turns back to Yamato and says like, hey, like don't you laugh at that dream, that's my brother, he's gonna do it, Yamato's like, I'm not gonna laugh, like that was fucking beautiful. And then you see this really beautiful composition and smooth animation of Luffy as a child and Gold D. Roger as like depicted in Oden's logbook, sharing their dream at the same time, just perfectly meshing together this inheritance of will theme. If you haven't seen episode 1015, like, you've got to see it. Like, it really is a masterpiece. It's as good as any other episode of anime that I've really ever seen. So if you're a manga elitist like me, go check it out. You will be very happy with what you see. So now we're getting back to very modern One Piece. And Luffy's dumbass finally remembers, hey, I don't think I've ever told these guys my dream. So he's like, okay, I should probably tell them. And so he shares his dream with them. And we get to see each of their reactions, and they're all shocked. They're all dumbfounded that somebody would even say that bullshit. And I remember at least that Usopp's like, that's impossible. And like other people are like, how could you even like think of that? But ultimately, they all quickly go, yeah, that's like a very Luffy dream. We know Luffy can do that. So after that initial flashbang, they realize that Luffy can achieve this dream. And I think it's kind of a beautiful setup for the final saga, because what's going to happen at the end of the final saga, Luffy's going to claim the One Piece and make this dream a reality. And it's just, so you're going to tie up this perfect little bow at the end of One Piece with this thematic start at the beginning of the saga, and tie it in with what Luffy's dream actually is and how it ties together everything in One Piece. That's my hope. I mean, I think that Oda really has gone to great extents to emphasize how important this dream is. And partially, I think he hasn't been able to share any of the information about the dream or share any of the words in it, because if he does it, it's going to spoil many other mysteries of One Piece. We've had other times in One Piece recently where someone is saying some really important lore shit, and this is in the manga, the actual speech bubble gets covered up by somebody else saying something or some kind of loud noise so that we can't read the full message. He doesn't even try to do that with Luffy's dream, because I think it's just too risky on revealing too much. So because we're talking about Luffy's dream, I think we should really also spend some time thinking about just like dreams in general, right? And one of the most important ways we can think about that is like, what is the dream of some of the other major figures in the world? What is the dreams of the other contenders for the One Piece? For example, there's Blackbeard, who we first meet on Jaya, and he has this crazy ass panel, this crazy ass moment where he says, dreams never end. Dreams will never end. And right before this, we have Luffy going, I like this. And then Blackbeard's like, I hate that. And then Blackbeard's like, I love this. And Luffy's like, I hate that. It's like cherry pie. And I forget what the other one is completely. But, they're kind of like these opposite taste type of things. Which makes me think that Blackbeard's dream, which will have no ending, which will never end, it's something that is the opposite of Luffy's. So Luffy's dream very much has an ending, and whatever Luffy's dream is, I'd be willing to bet that it's one of two things. It's pretty much the opposite of whatever Blackbeard's dream is, or it's the same dream as Luffy's, but with kind of this like fucked up twist on it. Either one of those possibilities are like very interesting to even think about. You can read plenty of theories and stuff online about what Luffy's dream is. And part of the reason why I haven't said what Luffy's dream is or guessed or theorized at all is because I have no fucking idea, honestly. And I think anybody that tells you they have a good idea, they're probably bullshitting you a little bit. Or there's going to be some major holes in their logic. Because again, I think Oda is hiding this information really carefully. But we're starting to see some information. So this is where I'm going to say, current manga readers, you're good to keep watching. But if you're an anime only, you should probably get out of here because we're going into some recent manga material that goes into the true history of the world and stuff like that. All right, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Recently we learned / confirmed that the world of One Piece is like mostly sea. It's almost entirely a big ass ocean because the sea levels have risen massively since the days of the Void Century. There are old ass civilizations at the bottom of the seafloor, and that's a major problem. And in fact, Vegapunk said the rest of the world's going to sink as well. Now, if the rest of the world sinks, I just want to say that makes the all blue. So I think in a way, a lot of us are thinking the rest of the world's going to sink. That's bad. But maybe it's actually good. Maybe that's part of the goal of Luffy, the goal of Joy Boy, the goal of Roger. I just don't know why yet, right? Because if they want the whole world to be an ocean, to be an all blue to fit Sanji's dream, then we have to have a way that people can obviously not immediately die from a tragic flood, but also become freer than they ever were in this current world where they're kind of all landlocked on little tiny ass islands around the world. So I think there's a good shot that Luffy's dream has to go along with something about the world flooding or stopping the world from flooding. And then part of this might have to obviously do with the red line being destroyed or sinking the red line itself. It's hard to say exactly what the goal will be, but it's going to be somewhere in that realm, I think. We also now know that the world might be kind of like controlled essentially by like freaking demons, or like in Japanese, yokai. And these like demons / demon spirits or entities or whatever. And they could just be people that are devil fruit users or like satellites of Emu. I have a video on that as well. There's some really dark stuff that happened in the story that we don't have the full picture on yet. And the world is the way it is because they made it that way, right? I mean, that's how I see it so far. So Luffy's dream, if they've made the world a certain way, I think that Luffy's dream is going to be something about changing the actual like structure of the world to put people more on like an equal level. And part of that will be, bringing fishmen up to the surface to be underneath the sun. Part of that will be bringing the celestial dragons, the rulers of this world, down to be on the same level as, humans, which they are, and they're just kind of standing up there. I think Luffy will do something that puts everybody at equal freedom, having an equal opportunity to seek their own dream, to eat as much food as they need, and to live a life of joy, right? After all, to do something like this, to make this type of change, it'd have to be something that sounds impossible, sounds absurd. Only a child would even think of this being a possibility. And when we start thinking about this possibility with those kind of tags on it, those are some of the same tags as Luffy's dream, as being impossible, shocking, ridiculous, childlike. That's what makes me think Luffy's dream is going to be about changing like the physical structure of the world for the good of the world, for the good of which equals for the good of himself. I think there's some other legitimate possibilities of Luffy's dream out there, like, throwing a party with everybody in the world, being able to eat as much meat as he wants. I don't really think those are going to be the dream, but I could see why people think that. Let's put it that way. Ultimately, I think that the qualities of Luffy's dreams are these several things. One, nobody will be forced to be hungry. Everyone will have access to food. It will be a world full of laughter and joy. His dream is going to be something that brings the world into a new age, something that only he can usher in. And maybe most importantly, it's going to be something that liberates the world. This is a world with extremely oppressed people. There are slaves, there are peasants, there are kings, there are people above the law, there are victims of people that are protected by the law, and Luffy's dream is going to be something that liberates everyone from that type of oppression. There's also like the oppression of the world where if you're like a regular ass person in One Piece, you're like just completely fucked. You're just stuck on your island and you can't get off because there's giant monsters in the way. You won't be able to get around anywhere. You'll get lost and just starve to death. Pirates will attack your ship and kill you. You just have to stay on your tiny little island, and then you have to pay an outrageous tax for the celestial dragons to just like throw away your money, just light it on fire, and you get protection, and the Navy shows up and extorts more money out of you, probably. Or they just don't show up at all because they're busy. Their goal has nothing to do with protecting people. Their goal is to protect the world government, and the world government's goal is to protect the truth about this world, to protect the true history of the world and keep it secret at all costs. And so with that desire to protect the world, like, what is Emu's dream? Does Emu have a dream? I'm kind of feeling like they could be empty of a dream and could be kind of lost themselves. And that's what makes them like seek out this isolation. It's what makes them seek out this like obsession with people that are possibly going to like overthrow them. But it would be really interesting if Emu, who is, probably as old as the Void Century, if Emu once had a dream and something happened and that changed them into essentially a nihilist, right? A nihilist is possibly one of the scariest qualities that a person can have because they just believe in nothing. And that belief in nothing is terrifying. And I think Oda really thinks that is terrifying as well because Hody Jones is a character that hates for no reason. They are nihilistic. And while he's not a challenging opponent to Luffy in like a punch fighting type of situation, he's a challenge to Luffy's dream. He's a challenge to the ideology of freedom. Hody Jones says, you see all this pain and suffering in the world? Hody Jones looks at all the pain and suffering in this world and ultimately succumbs to it and becomes a nihilist, somebody that believes in nothing, and because they believe in nothing, that nothingness gets filled with hate. Luffy, on the other hand, believes in freedom, believes in liberation, believes in joy, and thus I don't think Luffy's ever shown a hateful moment in his body. And Luffy's been fucking mad, and I love Mad Luffy. Mad Luffy, that's a vibe. But hate. I've never seen Luffy hate anybody. And I think that shows that Luffy is essentially the opposite of nihilism. As we know, Oda loves to bring back like ideas from earlier in One Piece and bring them back into important matters in the later parts of the story to connect themes together. And like that's part of what makes One Piece so special, right? Is that everything in One Piece feels very connected, and so the world is like very balanced. The like world building, and that balance is something that's really hard to describe, but it's one of the things that makes One Piece just fucking incredibly special. And I think at the center, of that balance is the dreams of the people that live in the world. Luffy's dream. And when we learn more about Luffy's dream, it's probably going to be pretty fucking close to One Piece ending. But what do you think of Luffy's dream? Do you know what his dream is? Do you have any idea what his dream would be? Or what would you like Luffy's dream to be? How would you like him to change the world? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this episode of Big News, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel to catch the next episode, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.